I'll never forget that morning. Honestly, I wish I could. Sun was barely peeking over the rooftops. Everything calm, birds still yawning, when suddenly this god-awful metallic roar slices through the neighborhood like a nightmare with a motor. For a second, I figured, hey, maybe somebody's got an early concrete pour or the city's finally fixing that pothole. But no, the noise was coming from my backyard. I grabbed my slippers, heart pounding, ran out the back door. And what do I see? There she is, Melanie Payne, self-proclaimed queen of our HOA, standing in my grass with two nervous-looking workers and a running chainsaw, grinning like she'd just invented fire. I know, right? Who needs caffeine when you wake up to an HOA president trying to chop down your family tree? Now let me back up a sec. That oak wasn't just a tree. It was the anchor of my entire yard hell, my whole life, if I'm honest. My grandfather planted it before most of these houses existed, back when the neighborhood was just wild pasture and gravel roads. I grew up in its shade, counted the years in rings, grilled under its branches, hung lanterns for my wife's birthday, hammered a swing for my niece. If a backyard can have a heartbeat, that oak was mine. But Melanie, she didn't see a living memory. She saw a blemish on her imaginary brochure. And that day, standing between her and the trunk, while those workers hesitated, I realized this wasn't about safety, it was about control. "Kill the engine," I yelled, voice probably cracking. "Nobody cuts another inch." The older guy, Cap, he said later, looked like I just offered to pay his bail. The other looked to Melanie, waiting for her cue. She lifts that clipboard chin high, and in this voice dripping with HOA righteousness declares bylaw 47.8, unsafe vegetation must be removed. Emergency HOA action. Never mind the fact that no such bylaw exists. I laughed. Couldn't help it. "You can barely authorize a lemonade stand without board approval," I shot back. "You want to show me this magical bylaw, or are you just making it up as you go?" She smirked that smile that never reaches her eyes and started rattling off a string of rules. But I could see the workers already regretting their life choices. Here's where it gets good, because I pulled out my phone and started recording. I told her real calm for documentation. "Please state your name, title, and exactly which bylaw authorizes you to trespass on my property and butcher a healthy tree." She blinked. The workers found their shoes deeply interesting. Melanie Payne, president of Brookstone Meadows Homeowners Association. Under bylaw 47.8, subsection B. You get the idea, just bluffing her way through. I pressed her. "Can you read me the text, page number maybe?" She bristled, which you seem to chronically ignore. I hit record on a voice note for good measure and told her I'm calling the board and the police. And if you're still here when they arrive, you can explain your beige theology to them. Well, that hit a nerve. She spun on her heel, snapped at the workers, packed up and told me crisp as an autumn apple, "You'll get a notice of violation this afternoon." Then she tapped the trunk with her pen like she was cursing it. "Canker rot, hazard, bark fissures, all nonsense." I told her arborist's report says healthy. "Want to see it?" She just glared, left the yard with the kind of dignity only a retreating tyrant can muster. The iron of my gate slid closed behind them, and for a minute the world exhaled. Even the birds came back to bicker in the gutters. I knew she'd escalate, so I called my lawyer Thomas. The man could wear a suit over the phone. "You did the right thing," he said, after hearing the whole saga. "Trespass is trespass, Ethan. If she keeps pushing, we're not talking HOA slap fight anymore. We're talking felony property damage." He told me to keep everything documented and call the cops if they tried again. I sent the video, the arborist report, then drafted an email to the HOA board, cold factual, every timestamp, every lie quoted verbatim. Didn't take long for the group chat to light up, neighbors sharing footage, people complaining. She tried to cite us for a bird feeder or "happy to testify if you need." That afternoon, I bought more cameras and a box of no trespassing signs. The clerk asked raccoon problem. I said two-legged. He just nodded. Old village code for say no more. When the board finally replied, James Holloway, the chair, wrote back with the weary clarity of a man who's seen too many HOA wars. There is no bylaw 47.8. No removal or citation is authorized. Any notices to the contrary, forward immediately. I taped that email to my back door, right at eye level, felt heavier than any threat she could send. That oak stood in the sun, throwing cathedral shadows across the grass, unbothered. I envied it. I made a list dates calls, next steps. Melanie had brought a chainsaw to a paper trail, but patience can be sharper than panic. That night I barely slept. Every creak outside sounded like her coming back with her goons. By dawn, I'd brewed enough coffee to fuel a search party and called the non-emergency police line. When I said chainsaw, the dispatcher got serious. Officer Rodriguez and Chen showed up, walked the perimeter, checked the bark. Just a shallow nick, more insult than injury. "You got her on video?" Rodriguez asked. I handed him a thumb drive. "If she tries again, that's enough for charges." He told me, "Keep those cameras rolling. We'll swing by on patrol." For the first time in 24 hours, I felt the law on my side. Melanie didn't back down. That afternoon, I got an official HOA violation notice signed in dramatic script, demanding I remove the oak or face a $250 daily fine, bylaw 47.8, again stamped with some knockoff seal. I laughed so hard the mailman asked if I was all right. Send it straight to the board and Thomas, who both replied, "Disregard. She's not authorized. Forward any more notices." But that wasn't enough for me, so I called James directly. Turns out Melanie wasn't even president, just chair of the landscaping committee. Her only real job was picking seasonal tulips. The board was fed up. "You sending us this evidence helps. We'll be calling a meeting," he said. Melanie had just handed me Exhibit A in her own downfall. The neighborhood rallied. People started sharing stories. She fined a family for sidewalk chalk, told another they couldn't plant roses, claimed trampoline ownership attracted delinquents. Suddenly, Melanie's crusade looked less like leadership and more like a one-woman show gone rogue. But power bullies never surrender quietly. Next day, 3 more fake fines in my mailbox, each $250, like she was running a monopoly bank. I lined them up on the kitchen counter, filmed a video day 3 of Melanie's fantasy HOA, $750 in tree fines. Maybe next week she'll cite me for breathing without a permit. Neighbors thought it was hilarious in a sad way. That night, James called again. "She's stripped of all HOA responsibilities, official in writing. If she tries anything else, it's legal action." Did I believe she'd stop? Not for a second. People like her don't read warning signs. They plow right through them. So I doubled down. Motion lights, reinforced locks, more cameras, each one with cloud backup. First night I sat on the porch with a beer watching the feeds on my tablet, the oak standing proud in the center, its branches whispering, "Don't sweat it, kid." And wouldn't you know it, next morning at 6:12 a.m., my phone buzzes motion alert. There she is, Melanie, pacing outside my fence, scribbling furiously on her clipboard, snapping photos of my yard, shooting daggers at the oak. I replayed it 3 times, half annoyed, half impressed by her persistence. Later, the HOA board emailed formal notice: Melanie Payne stripped of all authority. Any further action is fraudulent. Forward to us. She'd been publicly declawed, but I knew she'd be back. 3 nights later, a storm rolled in, thunder shaking the windows, wind making the oak sway like an old preacher. Melanie's own neglected pine tree snapped in the gale, crashed straight through her roof. The whole street woke up to the noise. Melanie, soaked and wild-eyed, charged into the street screaming that I sabotaged her tree, accused me of revenge, said I'd poisoned it. The police arrived. calmed her down, and one by one neighbors stepped forward. That tree's been dead for years. She ignored every warning. In the end, city inspectors left her an orange code violation notice on her door. Karma, you know. She tried to blanket the neighborhood with fake citations, accused even herself to make it look fair, not realizing she'd handed the city written proof of her own violations. It was like watching someone report their neighbor for speeding, then handing over their own stack of unpaid tickets. At the next board meeting, neighbors spilled out their grievances, and James laid out the evidence: fake notices, bogus fines, the infamous emergency inspection. Melanie argued, "I'm the only one protecting this community." But the room was silent. James replied, "You're not president. You never were. You've been stripped of all authority." She stormed out, but everyone knew she wasn't done. A week later, just after midnight, my camera pinged. There she was, Melanie hoodie up, sneaking across my lawn, chainsaw in hand. She fired it up and drove it straight into the oak. I called 911, stepped onto the porch and shouted, "Melanie, drop it. You're on camera. Police are coming." She screamed, "I'm saving the neighborhood." As neighbors poured outside, phones filming, sirens screamed, cops arrived, demanded she drop the saw. She finally did. She was cuffed on my lawn, babbling about authority as the oak bled sap from a deep gash. The next morning, the city arborist declared the tree compromised, unsafe. It had to come down. The crew showed up, and the whole block watched as they took away a century of memories. I filmed it, all evidence, but also closure. Turns out Melanie was in deep trespass, felony, property damage, reckless endangerment. My footage, the neighbors' videos, the cops' testimony, it all stuck. She was arrested, made the local news. HOA president arrested in midnight chainsaw rampage. The press loved the story, even if the title wasn't true. Her fake bylaws, her endless citations, her downfall, every step documented. The board barred her from ever holding a role again. She racked up code fines on her own house, ended up forced to sell and move. The neighborhood, well, we came together. Insurance paid for the loss, even kicked in to plant a new oak. The Johnson kids painted a sign, "This yard is ours too." We planted the sapling as a community, set a plaque by the trunk, the Boyd oak destroyed by one, replaced by many. Now, we joke about Melanie's fantasy HOA, but the lesson stuck. Bullies win when neighbors stay quiet. Sometimes it takes a chainsaw to wake folks up. Community isn't built by bylaws or threats. It's built by people standing up and saying, "Enough." The new oak's roots are just getting started, but the old tree's spirit is everywhere. Next time someone tries to run the neighborhood with fear, they'll be facing all of us. So I gotta ask, have you ever dealt with a Melanie Payne in your life? Someone who tried to bully or control you? Drop your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that bullies only win if we let them. And if you enjoyed this saga, hit subscribe, because trust me, there are more HOA stories where this came from.